age of about 30, the name Lesley Molseed may be familiar to you. Her face became a poignant symbol of child murder. If you're under 30, you may know the name Stephen Kisco. His conviction for Lesley's murder was one of the most dramatic miscarriages of justice. Tonight, we can reveal new evidence in a bid to find the real killer of Lesley Molseed. Forgotten for 2 decades in a high-security laboratory in Yorkshire. A few remaining fragments of evidence from Lesley Molseed's murder. In 1999, with the case reopened, new technology revealed a startling clue.
We were absolutely elated. Really. It's like all Christmases rolled into one. They had actually found DNA.
One Sunday afternoon in 1975, April had sent her daughter Lesley out to the local shop on the Turfill estate in Rochdale.
I says, Lesley, will you go and get me a loaf, darling? I haven't got enough bread for dinner and that. So the argument started. This was normal with Lesley. Well, how much am I going to get for it? I says, you'll get your usual. You'll get threepence and like it.
Lesley's way to the shop lay up Styups Lane.
I believe that Styups Lane is the place where Lesley was abducted. It's clear she was going down there to the shop. It's a high-sided lane and would afford some protection to an abductor. And I have to say, I suspect that Lesley was probably talked into the car.
She was such a chatty little thing. Everybody knew Lesley. Well, most people knew Lesley, or they knew of her, because she was such a chatty, friendly child.
That afternoon, a driver on the A672, the road that runs from Halifax to Oldham, saw a girl who looked like Lesley walking with a man on the moor.
She was 11, but she looked smaller. She looked about maybe 9. In height, very small, very tiny.
3 days later, her tiny body was found on the moor. Lesley had been sexually assaulted and stabbed.
After two hours, I knew that Lesley was gone. And after 3, I just turned to my husband and I looked at him and I says, Lesley's dead.
I believe Lesley was led up there. It's hugely poignant that the shopping bag is at the scene, and I think probably she walked up there with that shopping bag and thought she was going home later that afternoon.
My husband woke me up and said the detectives think they've found Lesley. They wanted us to go to Halifax. They just took me down the corridor, took me into a room, and she was lying on the table as though she was asleep. She just looked as though she was asleep. And for one wonderful moment I thought she was asleep.
But the tragedy was made even worse, a notorious miscarriage of justice. Police arrested Stephen Kisco, who lived with his mum in Rochdale, and he was convicted of Lesley's murder.
It had a closure to it, an ending.
There was considerable compelling evidence in 1975 that Stefan Kisco had been the killer of Lesley Molseed. Detectives had a signed confession. They had allegations of 2 indecent exposure offences that they could link Kisco to, and there was other aspects of evidence as well that suggested he may have been responsible.
Yet Stefan had confessed under circumstances that would nowadays be inadmissible in court. And his mother, Charlotte, knew for sure he hadn't done it. He'd been with her at the time. She campaigned tirelessly for his release.
Knowing that Stefan was innocent was a driving force because she was with him. And they did what they did every Sunday, which was visit the grave of his father. Stefan, he's often been painted as somebody who was not very bright, but I think that's unfair. He worked for the England Revenue as an inspector, held that job down, was doing well, spoke a number of languages, played a musical instrument. So he was certainly intelligent enough I think what he was extremely naive and ingenuous.
15 years after Stephen had been sent to prison, Campbell Malone persuaded the Home Secretary to have the case reopened. It soon emerged that Stephen was infertile. That meant he couldn't possibly have produced the semen found where Lesley died. In 1992, after 16 years inside, Stephen Kisco was released.
I didn't accept it right away. I just couldn't fathom out how they could keep that man for 16 years and him not be guilty.
16 years has been a nightmare and hell, to be honest with you. In the way that a prisoner of the nature of the offence with which I was convicted of gets treated in prison.
Less than a year later, Stephen had a heart attack and died, and soon afterwards his mother, Charlotte, followed.
I think it was her determination to see Stephen free that kept her alive, and then to be there for him because he desperately needed her by his side when he came out.
Stephen Kisco was definitely innocent, so Lesley's killer is still out there, and a new inquiry's underway.
A major stumbling block for us was that most of the evidence had been disposed of in the 70s. All we ever had to work on was the paperwork involved in the case. We knew that Stephen Kisco couldn't produce sperm, and we knew that sperm had been on Lesley's body, but only through documentary evidence.
The test that we used was specifically developed for this case, and we undertook 2 or 3 months of experimental work.
I remember getting the call, hearing that we now had a DNA profile.
Now all police needed was a match, and the focus was on where Lesley was abducted. Over 200 men have volunteered for tests, many from the Turf Hill estate in Rochdale.
Are you prepared to give us a sample?
Yeah.
The man would, if living, be between 50 and 70 now. We can, with one simple process, eliminate people from this inquiry once and for all. We have indeed checked the profile against people like Peter Sutcliffe, Robert Black, the type of people that are in prison for such things now, and there is no match there. All we need is a name. After 28 years, we will never have a better chance of catching the killer of Lesley Molseed.
Max, you say you've tried to get a match, but you've only released the fact today for Crimewatch that you've got this DNA. Why have you withheld that?
Well, it's a wonderful breakthrough for West Yorkshire Police in a crime that we're really keen to see solved. And of course, Crimewatch have a terrific record in terms of old cases. We've held on to this information because in the time we've had it, we've looked at all the suspects that were raised in 1975. Something like 12,000 people were seen in the first 3 months, and gone through the main suspects. We haven't found a match, and I'm looking to viewers to help us find that match tonight.
Now, the tragedy is that if people had suspicions, because Stephen Kisco was in prison for it, they presumably assumed they'd been wrong.
Absolutely, and I quite understand why people perhaps haven't come forward in the past. We have a situation here where Stephen Kisco was arrested something like 3 months after this terrible murder in October 1975. So I'd look to people to think about going back to 1975. We know that our offender must be in the region of about 50 or 60, 70 years old. He would have had access to a vehicle and probably knew the areas, probably knew Rochdale, the Turf Hill estate, and probably knew the Ripponden area. So if you can put those together, please call in.
That's possible, of course. He's since died.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a very important part of our work. It's a very easy process for us to eliminate people. Certainly we can see them in a 2-minute process when they're living, but we can also eliminate people who are dead. So I'm very keen that callers who might harbour suspicions about any particular man from that time do call in with those details. It's a simple process for us.
Whoever did this obviously doesn't have much of a conscience. He was prepared to see an innocent man stay in prison for 16 years. Perhaps more worrying, though, is it just seems improbable, doesn't it, that somebody who had an unblemished record before should abduct a little 11-year-old who looked 9, take her up to the moors, stab her repeatedly, and then never offend again.
Absolutely. This is a ruthless, brutal murder of an 11-year-old girl happened in Yorkshire. And, we really need to catch this man. He may well have offended before. He's likely to have offended since. The best thing we can do is get him behind bars.
Well, if that's not enough, listen again to Lesley's mum.
This will be the last interview that I will be doing. I live in hope, but I have to step down now. I don't think I'll ever see who killed Lesley. But my children might.
If you've any suspicions at all, as you've heard from Max, a DNA swab can just so easily settle things. Just call in, for the sake of Leslie's family and for the sake of any other potential victims.
She lived in Devon Drive on the Ladybrook estate, a neat row of bungalows for the elderly, all linked by intercom to social services.
Everybody in the family used to call her Tetty. I know it's a silly name really, but we don't even know where it came from. She was quite a placid person really. Never seemed to lose her temper, or it only happened as she got older and a bit forgetful and that. She couldn't move about. She used a walker. She used to have a care worker come in once a week, and then I used to visit twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, do all the shopping.
All right, Gladys.
Roland next door, he used to come and do her lawns and just visit every morning to see if she was okay. She used to go and stand on the doorstep just to see people going by and just to have a chat or wave to people. Most of the people round about there used to see her standing there, and they'd all say hello and all say what a nice lady she was. She used to sleep in the chair. She'd never go to bed. She used to say, "You die in bed."
Okay, Gladys, what I want you to do is start from the beginning and tell me what's happened.
Well, I fell on the floor and he tried to force himself on me, but I wouldn't let him. And he had an earring on and it fell out.
Get off me, you're hurting me. Go away, go away.
I remembered I'd got a lemonade bottle. I was down here and I picked the lemonade bottle up and I hit him with it.
Go away, go away, go away, get out.
And then he got up and took my handbag, and that's all I remember.
They didn't find the man. Nobody saw him coming or going, so they hadn't got much to go on, really. As the weeks went on, it just sort of like, well, just went out of her mind, really. She just didn't want to discuss it or talk about it. I always wondered if he'd ever come back myself, but I never used to speak about it to my auntie because I didn't want to upset her or worry her. We tried to put it out his mind as much as possible.
Hello, Mrs. Godfrey. Hello, it's Central Control. Can you hear us? Mrs. Godfrey, can you hear us? It's Central.
Gladys.
Mrs. Godfrey, it's Central Control. Is everything okay?
I bought your paper.
Hello, Mrs. Godfrey.
Gladys, it's Roland.
Central Control, can you hear us? Mrs. Godfrey, can you hear us?
Gladys.
Gladys was found murdered. She'd been raped and severely beaten, and DNA recovered from the scene shows her killer was the man she'd fought off 18 months before.
Well, she was poorly and she was very frail. we didn't expect her to carry on many more years, but for her to live the life she's led and then die in these circumstances, it was devastating to us all. Devastating.
Poor Gladys. And Kevin, you know that it was the same man who committed both attacks. Was he local, do you think?
Well, Gladys was attacked in April 2001. We know the same man attacked her in September 2002. It is my belief that the offender either lives in that area or definitely has connections to that Mansfield area.
You've got one thing in particular that might point to a local area.
Yes, in the April attack, Gladys's handbag was stolen, and that was found abandoned some 300 yards away on Arundel Drive on the Ladybrook estate.
Arundel Drive?
Yes. That's a key area for us. The offender may live in that particular area.
And what have you been able to find out about him?
We know that he's a white man. He's tall, possibly 6 foot tall. Gladys described him as a youngish man. But what we do know from the April attack is that Gladys scratched him and pulled a gold-hooped earring from one of his ears.
Now, we've got the earring, so let's just show the viewers here. There's nothing particularly distinctive about it. I mean, it's hollow inside, and you can't see it on the camera, it's got a tiny little dent on it, but someone might recognise that. So presumably he will have come home or gone out from this attack with a scratch on his cheek and missing an earring.
And minus an earring, most definitely.
And crucially, you've got DNA, haven't you?
We have got DNA. I would urge anyone with any suspicions to come forward. We can eliminate people from this inquiry by a simple process of mouth swabbing.
Gladys wasn't discovered till 8:30 in the morning, but we saw the intercom there that connected her to social services, and that was activated at, what, 5:15 in the morning?
Yes, that's right.
So what prompted that?
This was a personal alarm that Gladys, a pendant alarm, kept on her walking frame. That could have been the offender entering the premises, leaving the premises, or it could have actually been Gladys trying to raise the alarm.
And there was a sighting at about 5:15 in the morning, wasn't there?
A crucial individual that we're trying to trace, a person on an old-fashioned cycle who was seen cycling along Winkburn Road from an alleyway which adjoins Devon Drive where Gladys lived. And this person was wearing an old tatty Mac and riding a bicycle.
And clearly that person may have nothing to do with this whatsoever, but you've got DNA, so it's very simple to eliminate the wrong person.
Absolutely.
How unusual is it, do you think, for someone to attack a person and then come back and try again?
It is unusual, and I would urge people to be security conscious, lock the doors and put the security chains on and just have their wits about them.
Take the sensible precautions. OK, Kevin, well, thanks very much. There's a £10,000 reward. If you've any idea of a name, a simple DNA swab can tell the police if it's the right man. Give us a call. Or you can call the incident room number on 01623 483 020.
That truly shocked people, and that was before 2 other terrible incidents were linked to it. It seems now that 3 young people have been attacked in all. One of them, Marsha McDonnell, died. The latest violence happened yesterday, about half a mile from where Marsha was killed, and again it was after midnight. It's revealed new clues. In a moment we'll show you what they are. But first, the most tragic case. Marsha's friends take us through what happened the evening of her death 3 weeks ago.
My dad took us into Kingston because we didn't want to get the bus, basically, because it was freezing cold. So he just dropped us before the bridge and we all walked over.
Well, we'd all arranged to go to the cinema to see Catch Me If You Can. I wanted to see the film because I thought it looked good, and Lou and Marsha wanted to see the film because it had Leonardo DiCaprio in uniform in it.
Oh, I don't fancy him. Why you turn him down? Yeah, well, I've got a boyfriend, haven't I?
Oh, I've got a boyfriend.
Marsha was such a big impact on everybody, and if I was ever going out with any of my friends, there was always Marsha coming out. She makes everyone laugh as well.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Look at that! This looks like my dad would wear.
No, I think it is your dad.
Oh, seriously, it's your dad! What are you doing in the window?
Could never ever possibly have an argument with her. I don't see how anyone could have an argument with Marsha.
I didn't think I'd find any that would actually go with the outfit.
we got there about half an hour early to see the film. The film was at 9:15, so we literally just had time for one drink, so we weren't in there very long.
It was my 21st birthday, so I was having a party and I wanted it to be a bit different, so I thought we'd have a fancy dress uniform party. And Marsha and Lee were desperately trying to come up with unusual ideas for what I could wear. Crazy ideas they're coming up with.
What about dustmen? Oh yeah, I think that'd be quite fun.
We were a bit late for the film, so we just rushed up to the stairs to get our tickets and then just went straight in.
Hands on your head.
Oh, that's the new IBM Selectric.
Put your hands on your head.
Print type in 5 seconds.
Shut up!
Pop out the ball.
Put your hands on your head.
The film didn't finish till 10 to 12 and our bus was at 5 to 12, so we had to race out while the credits were coming on.
We got the bus stop quite near where the station is. I don't know Kingston that well, so I just kind of followed them.
No, is this where you were doing?
Our bus was due at 5 to 12. As soon as we got there, me and Tasha got on the bus.
It's all right,
Yeah.
isn't it? It wasn't anything special. Oh, Marsha, here's your bus. Oh, no, it's ours. It's yours. Oh, okay, bye. Take care.
I will. I'll see you at your party, yeah?
Before then? Yeah. Okay, are you going to be all right? Okay, leave your mobile on. Give you a call, yeah? Okay, bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Marsha's bus was due every 15 minutes, so we knew she'd pretty much be getting on it in the next 5 minutes after we left.
After a few minutes, Marsha caught the 111 bus at 8 minutes past midnight. Her journey took her back over Kingston Bridge towards her home in Hampton. Marsha got off the bus in Percy Road at the stop after Hampton Station. She walked back down Percy Road and turned right into Priory Road where she lived. The time was approaching 20 past midnight, 20 minutes into Tuesday the 4th of February.
Someone's been hurt. I'm going to call an ambulance. I think I can see blood. Hello? I need an ambulance. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? There's an ambulance coming. You're going to be fine. Just hang on. Yeah, put it around her shoulders. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Just hang on. If you can hear me, just hang on. There's an ambulance on its way. No, nothing. I tried talking to her, but nothing at all, no response.
Marsha had massive head injuries. She was taken to Kingston Hospital, but died next day. She was 19.
Tasha went ahead with her 21st party because we were going to cancel it because of what had happened, but we know that Marsha would be the first person up there dancing about, so we just had the party and said a few words for her.
Yeah, I lit some candles for her. I really think she was there. I feel like she was.
This is Detective Superintendent Alistair Jeffrey, not just Marsha, but now 2 other people attacked in the same way, and you're sure they're linked. Why?
Well, we're linking these crimes because there are certain similarities between them all. They're all in fairly close proximity. They're all during the hours of darkness. They all seem random and motiveless, and the weapon used seems to be a blunt instrument in each occasion.
Now, let me just tell you a little bit more about these other 2 attacks to put them in perspective. A 17-year-old girl was found 7 weeks ago in Walpole Gardens in Strawberry Hill. It's about 2.5 miles from where Marsha was found. At first, people thought she'd just fallen on the ice. It was very snowy at the time. But at the hospital, they discovered that she had injuries on the back of her head, an injury probably caused by a blunt instrument. She was very seriously injured. The boy was hit here in Ormond Drive in Hampton. A man swung a heavy object at him twice, but the teenager managed to dodge. Just like Marsha, he'd been on his way home after a night out with friends. He was coming back from Kingston on the N285 bus. He got off at Hampton Hill, walked along the Uxbridge Road and into Ormond Drive. And that's where he saw someone, and this hasn't been released until now, emerge from behind a wall and run towards him. It was a dwarf wall, so the guy must have been lying down, hiding behind it, which is pretty significant. What else new have you learned from this attack?
Well, really the most important thing that's come from this attack is for the first time we have some idea of what the attacker looks like. It's not a brilliant description, but we do know that he's fairly tall, probably between 5'10" and 6 foot. He's a fairly slight build, and he did have distinctive clothing on at the time. He was wearing a white hooded top with the hood up, and over that was a dark jacket, also with the hood up, a fairly heavy jacket.
So he had 2 hoods, so he'd really come out protected against the night chill, and it was pretty cold then, of course.
He did have 2 hoods up, yeah.
Okay, it's been suggested in one of the papers this morning that he had a hammer. That was the attack weapon. You don't know that for sure, do you?
We don't know it was definitely a hammer. No, it was a blunt instrument of some type. But this type of attack with a blunt instrument is very, very unusual, and it wouldn't surprise us if this person has used that type of instrument on another occasion, perhaps for a minor offence or in some other way. So that could be quite significant.
Or hitting furniture, hitting an animal, somebody who's shown this sort of predilection for violence before like this.
It could be anything like that.
And given, as you say, that it's motiveless, it seems so irrational. Could this be somebody who's been in contact with mental health workers before? I mean, most people who are mentally ill don't get involved in any sort of crime, let alone this. But this seems so irrational. Maybe that's a possibility, a real one.
Well, it is a possibility, and obviously we're appealing to anyone out there who may have treated or may be treating someone they think could have committed an offence like this to come forward. Now, I know some might think that would be a breach of confidentiality, but it's quite clear from the General Medical Council that in actual fact this is in the greater public interest. This is about saving someone's life, potentially. So if anyone has any information like that, please call in.
3 attacks now. This is a real serious danger to the life of other people in the area. Let me come back to that in a moment. Ask you about the friends of this person. Anybody who's a family member, what would they have seen in his personality?
Well, the first attack was in early January, and it may be from that time that his behaviour, this person's behaviour, has changed significantly. And anyone that has seen a change in a friend or a family member that could believe that that's significant, then please call in. Every bit of information is vital.
These last 2 attacks were late on Monday night, early into Tuesday morning. Anything significant in that?
Well, really, the significance of that, I mean, the most recent attack was Monday night, as you say, into Tuesday this week. That person would have got back home, if he'd gone straight away, at about 3:30 in the morning, potentially, if he's a local man, which we believe he may be.
Now, we spend so much time on this programme telling people, look, serious crime isn't as widespread as often people think. But here in this area around Hampton, this is a real problem now. People have to take precautions. What precautions?
Well, really, we're just saying to people to stay safe. Don't put yourself in a position where you may be attacked. Be very aware of your surroundings. Go out with friends if you've got to go out. Be very careful. Just don't put yourself on offer.
If you've seen anybody who you think is suspicious, particularly if you see someone hiding as this guy was, for heaven's sake, call us here in the studio. If there's a member of your family, a friend who's been behaving oddly, if you are a psychiatrist or part of the psychiatric community, call us in the studio if there's anyone you think the police ought to know about. The number is always on the bottom of the screen, 0500 600 600, or call the incident room on 020 8358 0100. You can also email us. Just go to our website at bbc.co.uk/crime. Tonight, someone in Chelmsford Wood is going to be very, very worried. and some of his mates will know it. Who'll be the first to tell us who he is?
6 weeks ago, a father of two, David Warrilow, went into his local newsagent. 12 seconds later, he was dead.
Well, David is married to Tracy. They've been together for 22 years. They've had two children. One's Faye, she's 14, and Chad, and he's 12.
Is his injury? Yeah, I think so.
He's a very strong Villa fan. He lived for Aston Villa. He used to go every week. He worked for Midland Welding and the Birmingham Business Park. They put him on the road as a delivery person. He used to get up roughly about 6 o'clock. He used to come out the house around about 6:30, up to the Grove where he used to park the van, get in the van, round the corner, into the paper shop, get his paper, from there straight to his firm, load up, and then out on his deliveries. Monday to Friday, that was his routine.
David almost certainly knew he shouldn't leave his keys in the ignition, but he was only going for a few seconds. It was all part of his routine. But while he was inside, someone took their chance.
Cheers.
Bye.
Oi! What are you doing? That's my phone! Get out! Get out! What's your problem? Come on!
But watch again as the van sped off. A Volvo drove off too. That driver was either a witness or an accomplice. The van was then abandoned round the corner on Winchester Drive. Shortly afterwards, an anonymous 999 call was made from a nearby phone box. This is the recording.
Ambulance emergency.
We have an ambulance to Warrilow Close, Jamesy Wood, please.
Is there a house we're coming to?
No, there's a man lying in the road. I've just seen him get run over. Could you send one quickly? I'm going to go back and see if he's okay.
Where are you phoning from?
Phoning from a phone box round the corner. Warrilow Close, Jamesy Wood, please, be Chris.
Yeah.
Call the ambulance. You got a blanket or anything?
Yeah, I've got something inside.
Hello?
I'll just go and get it.
Yeah, ambulance, please. Yeah, a guy's been knocked over, I think. He's in the road. There's blood coming from his head and everything. I found him in the middle of the road. I don't know what's happened. There's blood everywhere, mate. Just came out the shop. There's blood from the back of his head and everything.
He was actually put to rest in all his Villa gear, Villa t-shirt, a Villa scarf wrapped round him. Everybody's dressed in Villa shirts, and even his flowers was claret and blue. But all the way through that service, I could see Dave lying there, and hatred in me for the person who'd done this. You know, of a person who can mow down somebody and not stop. To me, he's not a person, he's an animal.
At least there are some cracking clues on who was involved and who might have seen them. 5 minutes before the killing, someone was seen circling a white Vauxhall Astra outside the newsagent. Was this an innocent resident or the killer? Was that Volvo 480 that drove off at about the same time as the stolen van? Then these two men dressed in white, they may have seen something crucial. They were at the newsagent a couple of minutes before David got there. One bought something inside, his friend waited outside smoking a cigarette. Now they are not suspects, but they could be important witnesses. Who are they? And then there's that voice. Who made the anonymous 999 call?
We have an ambulance to Warrilow Close, Jamesy Wood, please.
Is there a house we're coming to?
No, there's a man lying in the road. I've just seen him get run over. Could you send one quickly? I'm going to go back and see if he's okay.
Where are you phoning from?
Phoning from a phone box round the corner. Willow Close, Chelmsford Wood, please be quick.
Yes.
Recognise that voice? Then there's a clue that we haven't got. It's this. The keys to David's van have still not been recovered. They were on a fob like this, a max power key fob. Now, we know there are thousands of these around the country. It's only if in some way you can have found one of these in the area or can match this somehow to the crime. Now, here with his team, Detective Chief Inspector Andrew Shipman, I think, Andrew, you think that news of this will have spread far and wide and that he himself would have told a lot of people.
Yes, I'm certain that the person responsible went out that morning intending to steal a car, not to kill David. And I'm pretty certain that will be weighing on his conscience now. And he may well have talked to family and friends about this, portraying the incident as an accident. And I really urge the family and friends to encourage him to come forward to us so we can deal with this matter.
Of course, if he's maintaining it was an accident, there's no reason why he shouldn't come forward, and obviously family and friends should very, very much push him towards that, because if he doesn't, obviously things look much, much worse for him. What about people who've heard on the grapevine who he is?
Well, anybody who's got any information at all should get in touch with us at the incident room. Quite clearly, we know who the person who made the call had a conscience, and I hope that the person responsible has a conscience and wants to come forward and tell us about this incident.
Call us here in the studio, or you can call the incident room. That's on 0121 712 6198.
17-year-old was killed after a night out in Southampton. In that time, police have found some significant new clues. And this evening, as we reconstruct the night of Hannah's death, we can tell you about some of these new leads. See if you can help find Hannah's killer.
Hannah was always a very happy person, one of those sort of children with a ready smile. And she's just, you know, that expression people say about flourishing into a young woman, that was what we were witnessing. It's just the sort of girl that you just always felt very proud of.
I first met her in year 7 at school. She was lovely. She was just always there for me if I needed her, and she was a great listener and would help me if I had any problems or anything.
It's okay, I'll tell you for sure.
We decided we'd go out on the Friday, so we got ready together.
Can I get a double vodka and lime and lemonade?
Yeah, that's
yes. Can I get 2?
And that was all we had for the whole night. We didn't have anything else to drink.
What? Cheers.
That Friday it was Comic Relief, and a local band called Afterglow were playing in the bar downstairs. But Hannah and her friend Helen went to sit outside.
I know, they're so good.
She was currently studying for the 4 A-levels, and she'd just had a set of results which were straight A's again.
Have you guys heard back from the unions yet? Yeah, I heard back from a nursing one in Leicester. Oh, I'm going to do nursing? Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm going to medicine.
She did a week's work experience in hospital last summer, and she just adored it, thrived on it, and that just confirmed for her that that was definitely what she wanted to do.
All right, then I'll see you later. See you. Are we going to make a move? Yeah.
We decided to go to the Sow Bar to see if there were any of our other friends down there.
They only spent 10 minutes in the Sow Bar. Hannah and her friend had then planned to go on to a club, but decided against it.
We were going to go to Lennon's, but we decided not to because everywhere had been really empty, so we didn't think any of our friends would be there.
Should we just not bother? Oh, yeah, okay, come on, let's go home.
We walked through Portswood, which is just full of shops, and we walked along a main road, so there's normally quite a few cars passing.
Does that usually come?
And then we waited at my bus stop, and then when we saw it in the distance, Hannah said that she'd start walking now, so we said goodbye.
Bye. Money.
Police need to speak to anyone who got on at that stop or who was already on the bus. They may be vital witnesses.
I could see her just approaching Shaftesbury Avenue, and she turned around and waved at me, and I waved back.
Hannah's short walk home should have taken her down Shaftesbury Avenue, Richmond Gardens, and onto Grosvenor Road. We don't know how far she got, but a witness heard screams and the sound of a car.
It's the not knowing what she's been through and the imagination and just knowing how frightened she must have been at some stage, and we can't get beyond that.
At 11 o'clock, Hannah dialed 999. She never spoke to the police operator, but her conversation with a man was recorded. She may still have been on the street, but the police think it's more likely she was in a car and dialling without her abductor's knowledge.
I instinctively knew that there was a problem when I woke on Saturday morning. She'd never, ever failed to communicate.
Once she came home later than we anticipated without telling us. She could see how worried we were about it, and after that she always made sure that if she was going to be late, if she was going to go later than she told us, that she got in contact.
It was a very, very terrifying and frustrating day because we knew Hannah. We were well aware that the police had had people say before, we know our daughter, she wouldn't run away from home. And it was just one of rising panic. I actually wanted to physically go and smash down all the doors in the neighbouring houses, and it was just a very long, very terrifying day. By the time I went to bed on Saturday night, I was certain that she was dead. And Sunday was just a numb day, I think is the only way I could describe it.
On Sunday afternoon, Hannah's body was found 4 miles from her home. She'd been strangled and dumped in bushes by the side of the road.
On being told, I think I immediately said, I need to see her. But something reassuring must have been said to me to make me think this is definitely Hannah they found. We've just been inundated with letters, flowers, cards.
I think it's really the people around us, the friends and the community and the police help that we've had that have pulled us through and given us that strength we need.
This is Detective Superintendent Alan Betts of Hampshire Police. Alan, this 999 call that Hannah made, that she tried to make, what can you tell us about it?
It's very difficult to discern exactly what is said on the tape recording. It's clearly a male voice, and from what we can make out, it appears to be a stranger to Hannah. We're trying to our best to enhance it.
And you're appealing tonight for an Asian man, or Asian men possibly, come forward?
Yes, there's 2 separate occasions when Hannah mentioned to her friends that there was an Asian man or an Asian men, two different people, who'd called her by name near her home. We're just trying to identify who they are. It's quite possible or probable they have nothing to do with this offence.
What can you tell us about a motive for Hannah's murder and how she died?
Well, we now believe that the motive was sexual and that she was strangled and left in Allington Lane after she'd been killed somewhere else. We're appealing to anybody who might have any idea of where she may have been assaulted. It's possible she was taken to a lover's lane or a dark area, and members of the public might have seen somebody there and dismissed it as a lover's tiff or something like that.
So it was after 11 o'clock on that Friday night, which was Comic Relief Night, of course.
That's
Someone
right.
may have heard something strange, may have seen something. Now, the new lead, or one of the new leads you've got tonight, is this connection to Southsea in Portsmouth.
Yes, I mean, it's about 25 miles away from Hannah's home. We found her bag at a glass recycling centre in Portsmouth, and we now believe that it was left in a bottle bank in Southsea somewhere after 6 o'clock on the Saturday morning.
And someone was seen putting what we believe was Hannah's bag in a bottle bank there.
Yes, we've got a vague description of a male seen putting a cloth material, which would appear to be Hannah's bag, in a bottle bank that morning. We're obviously trying to find out who that might be. Maybe there's a perfectly innocent reason for putting it in. Somebody found it and put it there. So we obviously appeal to anybody who did put a bag in a bottle bin to come forward.
So the thing is, who do you know who had a reason to be in Southampton at around 11 o'clock on the Friday night, and then had a reason to be in Southsea in Portsmouth between 8:30 in the morning the following day, the Saturday morning? If that gives you any ideas, if you have any clues, call us here in the studio. The number is always on the bottom of the screen, 0500 600 600, or call the instant room on 01256 406 469. You can also email us. Just go to our website at www.bbc.co.uk/crime.
In fact, of course, not many are actively investigated after almost 40 years. One is, though, and after 4 agonising decades, the victim's family is tonight pinning its hopes on you and on other Crimewatch viewers. And so is the community where it happened. A small village in South Yorkshire, where the crime is still talked about as though it happened yesterday.
Anne Dunwell was 13 and was brought up in Wiston near Rotherham with her grandparents and her sister Irene.
We had a very, very good upbringing with a lot of love in the family.
I'm going round to Auntie's for the night.
All right, love. Here, take these with you, you can have them for your tea. Get me purse out and get a shilling.
She was quite quiet, liked music. She thought the world of her grandma and granddad and my dad. She loved going to stop at my auntie's in Howard Road.
See you tomorrow, Gran.
OK, love, bye.
Anne took a bus to Bramley, some 3.5 miles away, and spent a few hours playing out with friends. Though she'd intended to stay the night, she changed her mind.
Bye.
No one's really quite sure why.
I'm going home to Gran's. OK, I'll walk up the road with you.
Maybe it was because her granddad was working nights and she didn't want to leave her grandma on her own. At any rate, what happened next is being unravelled by a detective who's been analysing decades of child murder.
Abduction and murder of young adolescent female of this age is quite rare, in so much as that we've only had about 102 cases over the past 42 years. And if you look at Anne in the circumstances of this crime, she only decided to make the journey that she was undertaking 15 minutes prior to leaving her Aunt Irene's address. That tells us that whoever committed this crime is an opportunistic type of offender.
Anne went up Cross Street, but, as she sometimes did, it seems she then went past the bus stop and began to walk the 3.5 miles home. She was almost halfway there when she was seen on Bawtry Road. It's likely she was grabbed soon afterwards.
There is almost a 70% chance overall of the offender being known to Anne. We're talking about someone that's acquainted with Anne because they see her in the area, they know her. Anne would probably be totally aware of the dangers of strangers, but wouldn't necessarily be aware of the dangers of acquaintances.
Nobody knew that she was missing. My auntie thought that she'd gone back to my grandma's, and my grandma thought she was at my auntie's.
That night, a farmer saw a grey or green minivan parked up near the old windmill at Carr. In fact, it's known as Windmill Lane, or Lover's Lane. Was this the killer? And did he know the place because he'd brought girlfriends here before?
I know from the research that I've done that this offender would have been 16 to 40 years when Anne was killed, and will now be 55 to 79 years of age. We sincerely believe that the offender is likely to be at the upper end of that age scale because the profile of car owners and drivers in 1964, they were much older than they are today.
4 hours later, on the same road, a car's headlights swept past something white. The driver wondered what it was, but it was only next day when he heard of what had happened that he realised he must have seen Anne's body. It was discovered early the next morning.
At a quick glance, I thought I saw a body. So I carried on, went through to work, parked my van, and I worked for the brother-in-law at the time, and I said to him, "Bill, I'm sure I've seen a body." I said, "Right, jump in the car, we'll go down and have a look." I didn't go right up to the body, about 8 feet away from the body. I thought it was a blonde lad, but apparently it was a girl. It really knocked me back, it did.
Anne had been sexually assaulted and strangled.
In all probability, Anne was able to identify the offender. She more than likely was able to identify the vehicle and therefore needed to be silenced. So Anne was probably killed to silence a witness.
As soon as I saw the policeman at the door, I knew they took us to identify Anne's body. That I will never ever forget. I remember seeing the bruises around her neck. I remember the bruises on her face, and that will stay etched in my mind forever.
Later that morning, Anne's clothes were found dumped in Ali Reservoir, some 6 miles away, on a route that goes to the A618, broadly in the direction of Anne's home.
When offenders commit this type of offence and they take items from a victim, they are generally deposited during a journey that the offender has to undertake. It may well have been that the offender was on his way home when he deposited the clothes in the reservoir.
I still hate whoever did this terrible thing to my sister. She didn't deserve to die like that. She had a lifetime. We've served the life sentence.
But of course, a killer has gone free until tonight. Detective Superintendent Ernie Roper of South Yorkshire Police wants anyone who lived near Rotherham in 1964 to think back to the murder. And Ernie, that's going to be pretty easy for people around there to do.
Yes, it affected the lives of thousands of people in 1964, and it still does. It really still is in their hearts and minds. And a lot of people who lived in that area are now scattered across the country with their families.
This is the compendium, the report that the police at the time did. And the investigating officer then, the senior guy, was convinced it was a local man. You're equally convinced?
There is absolutely no doubt. The strong local connections in this case indicate to us that the offender lived or worked in that area. He knew that ground very, very well.
And now you've recovered DNA from the clothing?
Yes, it's quite a simple process to give a voluntary DNA sample. It's painless, a simple mouth swab. And of course, I don't want people to worry about naming individuals. The names will be given in the strictest of confidentiality, and we will go to people to eliminate them and not try and point the finger at them for killing Anne.
So what sort of people are you hoping going to ring tonight?
Well, anyone with any information, people can put things together about a man who had a vehicle,
which
lived
was not
in the
that
area.
common at the time. 1964, not many people would have had access to a car. In fact, the police had hardly any cars in the area.
That's right,
at the
yes.
time.
But this man had access to a vehicle. He lived in the area, knew the area well. He was a violent man. He demonstrated that with the way he treated Anne. People will know him as a violent man. He'll have previously committed offences, maybe not convicted, maybe not reported to the police. But I want people really to put all these facts together.
And there's another thing. I know you've recovered some bacteria which suggest he had a sexually transmitted disease, which of course other sexual partners would have known about.
Exactly. That bacteria was found on the same item of underwear that the DNA was found on, and I'm absolutely convinced that people can put all these facts together, phone in tonight and please give us the name.
Have you been able to identify the particular disease?
Yes, it's gonorrhea.
So a woman who had a sexual partner in that area, who had gonorrhea, who had a vehicle, who fitted in terms of violence and all these other things. There's a lot to go on.
He may have even boasted to associates.
OK, well, if there's anything that you can piece together there, anything at all. You've heard how easy it is to eliminate somebody. It really is just a matter of going and asking them if they mind to give a mouth swab. Many, many men have already agreed to do so. It isn't a problem. Just give us a call. Our number's on the screen, and several of Mr. Roper's colleagues are here in the studio, or you can call the incident room on 01709 832 689. Detectives here hope a lot are watching tonight, because in large part this is an appeal to people who are inside, as well as anyone who did a stretch between 1990 and 1997.
My mum was 68 when she was murdered, and she was in good health. She did everything for herself. She never asked anybody for anything. She was fine. She was mum.
Irene Grainey was murdered in her flat in Bermondsey, South London, in May 1990. 13 years later, the case remains unsolved.
It was to this ground floor council flat in Rotherhithe that police were called on Saturday evening. A neighbour living above Irene Grainey in Eugenia Road alerted them after worries that she hadn't been seen. Officers had to break windows to...
It was one of a series of 8 very violent attacks against mainly older women in the London borough of Southwark. Maybe other attacks went unreported, but the known one started in 1988, went on for 18 months and culminated in Irene's murder. Victims said the rapist was then in his early 20s. He mostly went for ground floor flats and broke in after dark.
Take your clothes off, then I'll go. Be quiet. I won't be violent, but I don't want to hurt you.
When you go,
Be quiet.
I need a cup of tea. I'll make you a cup of tea. Please go, please, please, please.
Be quiet.
Former detective Brian Bowden-Brown is from the Murder Review Group, bringing expertise to long-standing unsolved crimes.
It was originally dubbed the Southwark Rapist series. I came across it because I started to review the murder of Irene Grainey. I had no idea at the time that a series of rapes such as these were involved. It's probably the worst series of crimes that I've ever come across. I mean, the violence and the sexual assaults that these old ladies had to suffer is absolutely sickening.
Brian consulted Metropolitan Police crime analysts who look for patterns in behaviour that link crimes.
He asked us to have a look to see what we thought, whether we could confirm that we believed they were committed by the same offender, and also to see if we could come up with any new offences that may have been committed since. To do this, we searched on the language used before one of the offences, where the offender said that he was being chased by some men.
I've just come from the pub and there are 3 black men chasing me.
She found a strikingly similar phrase had been used in many of the attacks between 1988 and 1990. But even more remarkable, after a 7-year gap, it was used again in a quite separate violent burglary in 1997.
We were absolutely convinced it was the same man. The offences had happened within the same small area of Southwark. The victims were elderly and they had a ground floor property.
Hi, mate. Can you help me? 3 people are chasing me. Let me in.
Don't even know who you are. Get out!
Minutes later, and next door, this time in the neighbour's bedroom.
Don't turn the lights on. I've got a knife.
What do you want?
Don't mess with me. I've just finished a 7 stretch.
What he did say was that he had just come out after serving a 7 stretch. Now, that could link in with the fact that we hadn't heard anything from him. He hadn't committed any offences since the murder of Irene Grainey in May of 1990. So it could very well be our man, and the fact that he hadn't done anything was that he was in prison.
I'm bigger with this!
Don't hurt him!
We only hint at the level of violence. The man was beaten with a metal towel rail and the woman was almost strangled.
Give me the money! Come on!
On this occasion, though the victims were badly beaten, they weren't sexually assaulted.
What worries me is that whilst we haven't had any recent offences like this that we believe he's responsible for, he's still out there. He hasn't been brought to justice for this, and we don't know when or if he's going to strike again.
When it first happened, I suppose I just wanted to get hold of him. I wanted to know why. Why pick on somebody that age? And, you know, obviously I'd like to have killed him. But as the years have gone on, I just feel that the man's really sick and he needs help. And somebody out there, he belongs to somebody, they must know. They've got to know. They've got to report it.
Apart from Irene's murder, at least one of the other victims nearly died, and certainly there seemed to be something like attempted murder again and again. It's really the sort of crime that creates revulsion among everyone, which is why we want help tonight from everyone, including those who might recognise the offender from a stretch in prison. This is Brian Bowden-Brown, retired formerly from the police force, but now taking on this in quite a big way. He could, the offender, have been bluffing about being in prison. On the other hand, it does make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. He could be, so we've got to take it really with some caution. But on the other hand, it would add up. No offences since 1990. 1997, he comes back.
Now, if he'd been in for something like this, you would have found him, because you can go through the records. That would have been easy. So it's unlikely he has been convicted for a similar offence.
I wouldn't have thought so. I think this man is a burglar. I think predominantly that's what he does, and I think that's what he did in this particular case. He burgled the victims' homes beforehand. He recognised that there was an elderly lady living there on her own, possibly disabled, Zimmer frame, walking stick, knew she was an easy target, went back later on and subjected them to these dreadful attacks.
Now, there is some evidence that this is the same man who, in 1989, was caught burgling the Great American Wine Company in Southwark, in this area. There he was interrupted by a member of staff.
Oh, I'm going to be mugged by two black guys. They're chasing me.
Now, Brian, that's still an important part of your inquiry. Tell us why.
Well, it is, because it links in with some of the other offences. What I'm very interested in is tracing the office manager, a lady by the name of Patricia Peters. Now, I'd like to speak to her because I think that she can give me some very important information, not only about the white guy who she disturbed, but she also saw a black man standing outside, and she was convinced that he was the accomplice of the white man. Now, Patricia Peters, I should say, was born on the 1st of October 1936.
So you know all that, but no one knows where she is. And of course, at the time, this wasn't linked, and she would have no idea that it was linked.
No, not at all.
Now, what about the accomplice? Because the truth is, he probably has no idea it's linked. He might be appalled at what his mate was up to.
Well, exactly, and I'm hoping that he is watching, because I really do desperately need to speak to him.
And if he says, look, I'm very frightened of ringing up because you're now going to do me for this burglary or something like that.
He's got nothing to worry about, Nick, in
You're
relation to
immunity?
burglary. For that type of crime, for burglary, 13 years ago, yes, I am. What I'm interested in is catching the guy who committed these absolutely horrendous crimes on these elderly ladies.
They are so horrendous that the Metropolitan Police themselves have put up a £10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the killer. If that was you, the accomplice, you've got that offer of immunity, you've got the offer of the reward. For heaven's sake, give us a call. And if there's any other way anyone else can help, call us here in the studio or call the incident room on 020 7321 7353.
It's sometimes surprising what you find out about people. This is the story of a well-liked man. Back in early December, he'd been out in Belfast city centre buying Christmas presents. It wasn't until next morning that anybody realised something terrible had happened.
Hello? You all right there?
On Tuesday the 3rd of December, Arthur Warrington McCauley, known to many of his friends as Warren, was found in Coles Alley in central Belfast shortly before 8 in the morning. Warren had suffered a fatal head injury and died 2 days later in hospital. He never regained consciousness.
Well, I first became acquainted with Warren nearly 30 years ago, when both of us came to train here in Mugglemoor Abbey as nurses. In more recent years, we worked together in the children's unit, children who had challenges in their lives. And he was known as a great confidant. People would have gone to him with their difficulties, and they always knew that they would get a kind response and good advice from Warren. That was a measure of the man, so it was.
Warren had a day off on Monday the 2nd of December and was seen by a neighbour leaving his house in Antrim, where he lived alone, shortly before 11 that morning. Some of his actions over the rest of the day are what you'd expect of a man devoted to his family and friends. Others have come as a surprise, even to those closest to him.
By early afternoon, Warren was in central Belfast, where it was the first day of late-night Christmas shopping. He was wearing black shoes, dark trousers and a blue fleece top. Just before 2:30, Warren bought a gift from the body shop on Donegal Place.
Warren was a very kind, very generous person. Always remembered people's birthdays, remembered important occasions, and celebrated those by buying very appropriate presents.
But many of those who received Warren's gifts didn't know there was another side to his life. During the rest of the afternoon, he made several visits to locations popular with some gay men. Warren used an alias at these times, Aaron.
This was a side to his life that was unknown to us, but something that he obviously wanted to keep very much to himself.
One of the places Warren visited that afternoon was the public toilets on Arthur Lane. Shortly after 3:30, he left with an acquaintance whom police have eliminated from their inquiries. They walked around Donegal Square together before heading up Callender Street towards the Woolworths on Ann Street, where they parted shortly after 4 o'clock. Half an hour later, it had turned dark. CCTV cameras recorded Warren visiting the public toilets on Coles Alley, yards from where he was found the following morning. From then on, the trail runs cold. What we do know is that Warren had made plans to meet someone called Stevie or Paul at the Custom House bar on Skipper Street at 8 o'clock, but he wasn't seen there. But at 9:10, a woman walking along Church Lane was startled by someone she assumed was drunk. It was Warren, and he lay in Coles Alley until he was found the following morning. About 20 minutes later, a shop assistant was heading home along Ann Street after finishing her shift. She saw 2 young men walking ahead of her, who recognised a couple emerging from the far end of Coles Alley from where Warren was lying.
What have you been up to?
Were you any of these people, coming out from Coles Alley, walking down Ann Street, or in the group at the bandstand on Arthur Square? If so, police are desperate to hear from you. You may have vital clues that could help find Warren's attacker.
I think in a word, Warren is irreplaceable. He was such a talent and had such skill, such devotion and such loyalty to the children, to the family, to the families of those children and to his colleagues, that'll be a void that'll be extremely difficult to fill in.
Well, with me is Detective Superintendent Alan Mains of the Police Service of Northern Ireland and Ryan O'Neill of the Rainbow Project, which represents the gay community. Alan, do we know if Warren's homosexuality had anything to do with this murder?
Well, what I do know is that, first of all, the motive did not appear to be robbery, and secondly, with the people that I've sort of talked to, and that of the inquiry team, would suggest that Warren was quite cautious, and to the point where we know that he wouldn't have gone down the entry himself unless he was comfortable with the fact that he was down there with somebody. So I'm certainly keeping that very much open, but my inquiries are going down the road of that motive.
And then there's this window, isn't there, where we have no idea where he was between 5:30, what was it, 9:10?
Yeah, it's 10 past 9.
It's a complete blank then.
Complete blank. The trail goes cold for us. All day we've actually got Warren on camera. We know his movements. 5:30 on the 2nd, it just goes cold.
Now, Ryan, you're here to take calls from anyone, perhaps from the gay community, who doesn't feel particularly comfortable talking to the police. And if they want to remain anonymous, they can, can't they?
Can indeed, yes. We have a guarantee from the police service that any information received will be treated in the strictest confidence. Myself and my colleagues are certainly very pleased with the way the investigation has been handled, and that the police service are very aware of the situation that a gay man could find himself in when wanting to report such incidents.
Well, in terms of the situation that a gay man could find themselves in, I mean, Warren used an alias, didn't he, Aaron? Now, how common is it that someone would do that?
It can be quite common for people to use a false name, if you like, to protect their private life.
I mean, it's not that in any sense there's anything shady or untoward about either doing that or about Warren, is there?
Certainly not. It's just he wanted to protect his private life,
from other individuals.
Okay, now, you've got new information tonight, haven't you, about this character called Stevie or Paul? We're not quite sure.
Yeah, Stevie or Paul, we go back to the 14th of November last year. The information that we would have now would suggest that Warren knew this chap, and indeed McKee's Dam near Hillsborough would have met him sometime just before the 14th of November. Warren himself described to the witness as a chap being 6 foot tall, sandy coloured hair, in his mid-30s and good looking. Now we also know the additional information that we've now got that this chap lives somewhere in Belfast near BBC or the just off Farmer Road in a fancy apartment, and we really are focusing our inquiries to this chap.
Okay, well, call us here in the studio, or you can call the Rainbow Project. That's 02890 319 030, or call the Incident Room on 02890, again, 700 534.
Exceptional. This made headlines because it's unique. Never in British criminal history has anything like this happened before.
He did a year at Bristol University during Freshers' Week to say I've joined some clubs, including skydiving, and he knew what we'd think.
He phoned us after his first jump. He had literally landed. And he said, I missed the drop zone, I just landed between some cows.
But thoroughly fired up to it.
Absolutely loved it.
And he jumped then from then on as often as he possibly could.
Stephen Hilder was at an army college in Oxfordshire, and after about 18 months of parachuting, he took up formation skydiving with 2 friends. At the start of July, they were due to compete at Hibblestow Airfield in Lincolnshire. He arrived before his teammates and did 2 solo jumps. It was Wednesday, the 2nd of July, and as always after a jump, he repacked his parachute himself. The process involves folding and rolling, checking all the lines and webbing. Sometime after 5 o'clock that afternoon, he left the finished rig in the airfield kit room.
It was there from Wednesday afternoon till he collected it shortly before the fatal flight on the Friday afternoon. So during that period of time, the killer somehow got access to this room and either removed his kit or tampered with it here in this room.
On Thursday, the weather had been bad, so the competition was delayed and the competitors practiced on the ground. That night, they all assembled for a fancy dress karaoke party. Steve's team went in drag. Detective Superintendent Colin Andrews has no motive, but he does have a party full of suspects.
Well, Stephen's there having a good time with his friends, and clearly the person who killed Stephen may well have been at that disco and may well have known that when they tampered with his parachute, Stephen would jump to his death the following day.
It was a really good evening, and sort of everyone was dressed up and looking stupid, so...
And Steve was having great fun standing up for the karaoke, and that was just him standing up to just make a fool of himself.
Yeah, everyone was still having fun. It was sort of closing down around about 2:30, and I left just while the DJ was saying that it was going to be shutting down in a few songs, and Steve stayed around till the end.
In relation to the party, we need to trace everybody who was there. We know during the week there were 200 to 300 people who attended the site. If we trace all the people, then we will trace the murderer.
Steve had his own car up and he was just sleeping in that. We got the tannoy announcement saying that we were sort of going to be going up.
Once we got our kit on, we go to the main area where we kit check each other. On that day with Stephen's kit, everything was absolutely normal. Whoever did it knew exactly what was and wasn't checked.
While we were waiting to get on the plane, we just went through the dive we were going to do, made sure everything was clear in our heads, and just had a laugh and joke around before we got on the plane.
The police and Steve's family have given this footage to Crimewatch in the hope it might prick someone's conscience. This is the moment Steve jumped from 13,000 feet with his sabotaged parachute and a sabotaged reserve.
The actual dive was the best dive we'd ever done. And there was a point in the dive that we all just made eye contact and could just tell that we were all really happy and knew that we were doing really well.
They broke formation at around 4,000 feet, just as they went through the cloud. Steve now had 10 seconds to live.
Well, Stephen would have known that once he tried to deploy his reserve chute and it didn't work, that he had no chance of survival. And one can only imagine the terror that must have gone through his mind at that time. And he hit the ground doing about 120 miles an hour a few seconds later.
I landed fairly close to the main group. One of them sort of walked out towards me and said that one of the guys on my team hadn't opened a parachute, and I knew immediately it was Steve because I recognised Dave's canopy.
Late on the Friday evening, opened the door to 2 policemen stood there. And you know something's going to be, you're going to be told something. And that's when we were told on Friday night.
As soon as Stephen's body was found, it was obvious that his parachute had been deliberately tampered with. There were 2 scenarios here. Had Stephen been killed by somebody, or had he taken his own life?
Steve was just acting normally all the time I saw him. He was really focused and wanted to do well on the jump. I can't believe that it was anything other than murder.
Colin Andrews, was this aimed at Stephen? Could it have been a random attack?
Well, I'm not in a position to rule out a random attack, but my gut feeling is that Stephen was killed by someone that he knew, someone that he'd met at Hibblestone last week, and for whatever reason, somebody who had a grudge against him.
There have been conspiracy theorists who've said, look, there are movies like Terminal Velocity and Drop Zone. I think it's in Drop Zone that somebody actually is attacked like this. Their parachute's torn on July the 4th, and Stephen died on July the 4th.
Yes, and we are obviously investigating that. What I'm interested in is not the films, but any skydiver who had a particular interest in those sorts of film, and more importantly, was at Hibblestone last week, because there's no doubt at all that during that week the murderer was present at Hibblestone and the parachute was definitely sabotaged at the site at Hibblestone.
Now, you're pretty confident you must talk to everybody who was there at the Collegiate Week skydiving?
Yes, there's no doubt that the murderer was present at Hibblestone, so we need to speak to every single person who was at Hibblestone between the 30th of June and the 4th of July. One of the interesting things about this inquiry is that we've spoken to many people who believe they've got nothing interesting to tell us. But in actual fact, when we've spoken to them, they've given us crucial information. So my appeal is to everybody who went there, please contact the police, tell us everything, no matter how minute that detail is, and let us make the judgment as to whether or not it will assist the inquiry.
Now, you say your strong suspicion is that Stephen was deliberately targeted. Has anybody given you a motive, a reason for this?
No, there's no motive at all. Stephen was a 20-year-old student who had a bright future, but whoever did this carried out a wicked act, knowing full well that Stephen couldn't defend himself. They knew that Stephen was well known at the skydiving centre and that his particular parachute was very distinctive. We need to catch this person very quickly.
So anybody who heard an argument that took place that week, heard somebody being slighted by him, somebody taking offence at something he said? I mean, it could be as minor as that, could it?
It could be absolutely anything, yes. It could be a minor argument, a minor disagreement, anything at all.
And presumably the killer will have acted oddly or angrily or something beforehand, or perhaps afterwards, or maybe even will have confided in someone.
Absolutely. Certainly we were interested in people who went to Hibblestone who acted strangely before the killing or after it. And certainly, in my experience, many murderers do actually confess their crimes to a third party. And clearly, if that third party is watching this programme now, I would say, look at that film, think of Stephen's parents, think of Stephen, and come forward and tell us what you know.
The police are hopeful that DNA might help them solve this case, which would mean that it's very easy to eliminate people. Come forward, please, if you heard anything, and if you were there at Hibblestone for that Collegiate Week. The police need to find you. Just come forward, please. I said this case was unprecedented in Britain. It has been tried before. In April, a Marine in the United States was charged with 13 counts of attempted murder after sabotaging the parachutes of his colleagues. But fortunately, he didn't tamper with the reserve chutes too, so nobody died. Stephen Hilder's killer was more thorough and cold-blooded. Call us or call the incident room on 01 724 274 260, or you might contact us by email through our website bbc.co.uk/crime.
This is the Cross Keys in Redgrave in Suffolk. The couple who ran this place from the summer of '97, it was a dream come true. Their own idyllic little pub in a picture postcard English village. Marilyn Garside bought it with some redundancy money, But not long after she and her husband Jim moved in here, their marriage started to turn sour. The chain of events that followed led to murder. Marilyn and Jim had long had a difficult relationship, but at first the pub seemed to bring them together as she'd hoped.
We moved musically past, didn't we? Yeah. And, you know, we like it.
I started working here about 4 years ago as a barmaid. They were really nice and they really looked after me. He was a womaniser. He thought he could have any woman he wanted. He tried it on with most women who came into the pub and just made a fool out of himself.
You've been acting like a right tart all night.
If you've got something to say to me, don't say it in front of the customers.
The pub was dead after that. The trade went down and it was a real shame.
When the regulars stopped coming, money got tight and the Garsides took a lodger.
There's just no room for anything.
I had no idea what I was walking into and wish I'd not gone in there now. He started off being nice, thanking me, welcoming me, thanking me for what I was doing around the pub and the flat. And then he started being rude and started coming on to me and started threatening me. He said I was his woman.
You ain't here just to clean glasses, darling.
He told her about us on Christmas Day. He said, Lynn, I want you for love and security, and Therese, I want you for sex.
Marilyn was aware of her husband's philandering. Her hopes for the marriage were being crushed.
Lynn stayed here because she was scared of him and she knew deep down what he would do to her if she did leave.
He kept repeating, I could shoot her like a rabbit. Real hate in his voice.
Eventually, Lynn did pluck up the courage to leave, and Jim seemed fairly relaxed about it. The pub was sold and Lynn went back to Essex to live with her son and daughter. A few weeks later, Jim moved in with another woman. Lynn planned a divorce, and she agreed to give him half the proceeds from the pub.
She was much happier since she come back from the pub. She was back to her old self and laughing and joking, and she was so full of life again, knowing that he was out of her life, so to speak.
Once back in Essex, Marilyn visited her mum every day.
Sorry I'm late, Mum.
Well, it was so nice to have her back to help me, and I was coping, but I couldn't do the housework.
Don't you want your tea? Oh, leave it till later. Jim just rang, wanting to know where I was.
Oh, yeah.
What do you reckon on that?
Oh, I like that.
Can I help you?
Oh, Lynn!
As I drove down the road, it was like something out of a movie scene. There were flashing lights everywhere, people had lined the streets, and I thought, oh my God, what has gone on? And I obviously thought the worst at that stage, but I don't suppose anything could have prepared me for what the worst was.
You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Did you see who did it?
I saw him, but I didn't see his face.
No? Which way did he go?
Well, through the gates.
Yeah, and which way did he go once he came through the gates?
I didn't see him then. Give me up. Devastating to see it happen to your own daughter and to hear it happening.
Jim turned up later that evening and he put his head in my nan's lap and it was just this wailing noise going on, and I was sitting to the side of him and I was just looking at him and I couldn't see one tear rolling down his face.
When I got to Lesley's, they told me.
What did they tell you?
They told me Lynn was dead. She was stabbed. That was it.
There was no signs of sympathy or empathy towards Marilyn at all, or any usual signs of grief.
I knew right from the beginning he was involved in it, from what she told me, but I wasn't allowed to say it because it was hearsay. But I knew what had happened in my heart, I knew.
A week after Marilyn's murder, Jim took possession of her car, moved into her house in Romford and changed the locks to stop her son returning home.
Jim just decided to get rid of all my mum's possessions, all her clothing, just apparently put them into black sacks and threw them out.
Very soon it was apparent that Jim was behind the death of his wife. There was no other reason that we could fathom out for anyone wanting Marilyn dead other than Jim.
But Jim had a firm alibi.
I was out bowling in King's Lynn. I got a call from Lynn's son. He said, Mum's been attacked. I said, I'll be down straight away to the hospital.
We told Crimewatch exactly what we had, that we suspected that Jim was involved and that we were gathering evidence of his involvement in the case. But I still did not know who the killer was, so the programme was directed to assist me identifying the killer.
In an unusual twist, detectives hoped to set an elaborate trap for Jim. They planned to set up a bogus incident room in Norfolk, invite him to watch the programme there, and convince him the net was closing in. They hoped he'd panic and make contact with a hitman. But Jim was already getting rattled. Before Crimewatch went on air, he took a sudden trip to Alicante. As it happens, even without the trick planned by detectives, the programme turned up trumps.
The Crimewatch appeal was a great success. We had over 30 calls, but there was two real golden nuggets of information that come in. One was from a former wife of Jim's who we've not been able to track down. She was able to tell us in great detail the horrendous domestic violence she'd suffered at the hands of Jim, and this gave us evidence of Jim's previous violent behaviour towards women. But secondly, and more importantly, a solicitor contacted us.
My wife called out to me that the Cross Keys at Redgrave was on the television, and I recalled that I had seen Mrs. Garside. She came to see me and she discussed the fact that she was in an uncomfortable situation. It's unusual for someone to come in and say that they feel that they are being threatened with murder by their spouses, which she did say there were guns on the property and that she was concerned for her safety.
With all this new evidence, when Jim flew back from Spain, the police were waiting for him.
We were able to keep surveillance on him until we were satisfied where he was living, and then we arrested him.
Jim, it's the police.
We didn't charge him at that stage. We questioned him and we released him on bail. And that again was to try and attempt, now that he knew some of the evidence against him, whether he would lead us to the killer.
In fact, it was Jim's phone calls eventually led to his accomplice. The police worked out Jim had 3 phones and had given one to the killer.
We were able to track through the mobile phones a succession of calls from Jim to the killer of Marilyn.
Your wife's killer had the phone you'd been using the day before she was killed.
No comment.
We know that the killer had the phone in the area where Marilyn was murdered, and they thought that no one would be able to establish who had this phone. However, the killer made one fatal mistake, and the killer rang home, a short call to his home address, and through that I was able to establish Richard Bates was the killer of Marilyn Garside.
Richard Bates worked at Fisher's, a frozen food factory, and he had a set of knives for boning meat.
Richard Bates?
Yeah?
DC Galpin, this is DS Pryor. I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say will be given as evidence. Come with me, please.
So, who introduced you to Jim Garside?
Teresa. I used to work with Teresa at the factory. First time I met Jim, he came to the car park of Fisher's. I thought, that's nice.
The Mercedes had been stolen, and Jim persuaded Richard Bates to help him drive it to the continent where it was to be sold. It was during that 4-day drive to Greece that the 2 men plotted murder.
You conspired with Richard Bates to have your wife murdered?
No.
Richard Bates is skint. You manipulated him. You offered him money to be involved in the murder of your wife.
And there was more compelling evidence to come. Partial DNA found at the crime scene matched that of Richard Bates. The chain of events was now becoming clear. A week before Lynn's murder, Richard Bates went to her mum's house to plan it. Then on the day, he waited outside for her to arrive.
Hello, Jim. Yeah? She's not come. I've been waiting all afternoon. 12 o'clock you said she'd get here.
All right, I'll call you back.
Hello?
All right, where are you?
I'm in Romford shopping for new shoes. Are you bearing up, all right?
Yeah, I'm all right, yeah.
Look, I'm late for Mum. I'll see you tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Sit tight. She's on her way.
Can I help you?
It's done.
In June, after a 3-month trial at the Old Bailey, Jim Garside and Richard Bates were found guilty of murder and sentenced to life. Jim Garside's conviction was an unusual case for Crimewatch because the police already had a prime suspect. But in this, as in every case, once the viewers ring in with information, it's up to the police to do the final legwork.
What do you think? They look really good. Yeah? They really suit you. Let's see how they go with that top you got.
Hi, babe. How are you?
Hiya, Gav. How are you?
Not so good, actually. Life's a bit proxy at the moment. You two been shopping, then?
Yeah, over at the market. What do you think?
Yeah, very nice. Can I have a bite of your burger?
No, you can't. Yeah, you can have one on me, though.
Oh, nice one. Thanks, Julie. A cheeseburger, please.
Oi, wait your turn. I've been queuing here for ages. Can I have a large Big Mac meal with a Coke?
We're off. You coming?
Yeah,
You should learn some manners.
What are you talking about? There wasn't a queue.
Yeah, there was, and you jumped it.
Get lost, will you?
Hey, you can't talk to me like that.
But what exactly is your problem?
What, you trying to bully me? That what you get off on, is it? I'll phone the police.
You're going to call the police just because I got served before you? Oh, get a life. Oh, you got a knife in your bag? You going to put a knife out on me, are you?
No, I'm getting my phone.
Gavin, leave it, babe. It's not worth it.
You're pathetic, you are.
I'll get lost.
You bloody idiot.
Oh, I'm behind you girls. Go on.
You bloody idiots.
What was that all about?
He tried to jump the queue and I wasn't having it. Anyway, what was I supposed to do? I just put in my order and everything. So what have you two been up to recently? Apart from shopping.
Some Jay? For a few drinks? Yeah.
How is he?
Yeah, he's all right.
Give me my change. Come on, give me the change.
Did you? Did you like Hilder?
Yeah. And his mate Trevor.
Oh, yeah.
You know Trevor, don't you?
I do.
Come on.
Stupid. You know, someone said the other day that I make a great policeman.
I should do a lot of work on you to pass you off as a policeman. Security guard, maybe, but not a policeman.
Oh, chic. I reckon I'd make a great policeman. I've been stabbed. Call an ambulance!
Call an ambulance! Someone call an ambulance! You're stabbed!
It was only afterwards I realised that I wasn't at that point, I wasn't very far away. I went to Holloway and went to church, and when I came out of church, which was about a half an hour before the incident happened, I was just 200 yards away from the point where he died.
Help me. Call an ambulance.
What? Oh, jeez.
Julie, I'm dying.
Gavin, can you hear me? Talk to me, Gavin. Talk to me. Can you hear me?
Oh, mate. You okay? What's the name?
Can you hear me?
Come away, ambulance message.
The last time I saw Gavin was 10 days on a Wednesday night, 10 days before this thing happened. I'd just like to know why whoever did this to Gavin, you know, why did they just come along and stab him in the back for no reason?
DCI Martin Lee's in charge of the case, and this really was a killing over nothing, wasn't it?
It certainly seems that way. There were very few people in McDonald's, as we can see on the reconstruction and from the CCTV. There doesn't appear to be any reason for this assault at all.
I mean, there really was no queue. I was just, the whole thing looked completely absurd.
Absolutely.
But we could see him on CCTV. He's relatively short, about 5'6". What else can you tell us about him?
We can. He's about 5'6" tall. He's around 30 years old. He's got a Mediterranean or dark-skinned appearance, perhaps Mediterranean or Kosovan or something like it. We know that he's of medium build and he wears this very distinctive beanie, woolly hat with a distinctive motif on the back of it.
He had a little goatee beard, and he carried a 10 or 12-inch knife. He didn't run off to get this.
That's right.
This is something he habitually carries.
He carried the knife, it would seem, in the backpack with an Adidas logo on it that he had on his back. And yes, he was prepared to produce that knife and use it.
So a guy with an incredibly short fuse and an incredibly big knife is a very, very real danger to the community right now.
Yes.
Presumably when he went home, I mean, he doesn't kill every a few minutes, one hopes, so he would have been very agitated. This is a month ago on a Sunday lunchtime.
That's right. We think he was probably local because he ran away, and I think he knew where he was running. So he'll have got home perhaps to a partner or a friend or a relative in a very agitated state, perhaps sweating, with an excuse for why he was in that condition.
Well, there've got to be people in North London who can put a name to this guy and tell us where he is. If you know him, call us before he kills again. And incidentally, should it help, there is a reward, about £10,000 on this one, so give us a call. Or you can call the Instant Room on 020 8358 0200.
So long ago, the people involved could now be anywhere. And those who know something may finally be prepared to talk. We're travelling back some 30 years to 1973, a time when Northern Ireland's troubles were only just past their peak and army patrols were on the lookout for anything suspicious.
It's a body. Go get the police.
Okay, you two, come on in.
Brian, he was all right. He was like any other normal boy. He was tricky, yes, but he was lovable. He was the youngest of the family, and anything you asked him to do, of course he always said no, Mum. But in the end, Brian always done what you asked.
There were 5 children in the family. Brian's brother Eddie's now in his late 40s and lives in England.
Brian was very petite, very small kid, very small build for a 10-year-old. Quite frail. It looked like, in fact, he didn't eat. He only ate junk food, I assume, like we all did.
He was so small, his charred and dismembered remains fitted easily into a Hessian sack. It soon became a very big inquiry.
I was in my bedroom at the time, and I realised there was something going on.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. McDermott. Yeah. Could we come in, please?
I heard a lot of commotion going on downstairs, and a lot of screaming and crying and shouting. In the front room, there was a police constable with her arm around my mum. My dad was just sat in the chair, mortified. And I realised then it was bad news, that Brian probably wasn't coming home ever again.
Here's your toast, wee man.
Thanks, Mommy.
Sunday morning, and Brian was at home in Well Street off the Lower Woodstock Road in East Belfast.
Where are you going now?
I'm going to the park.
Put your jacket on. Here. Let me brush your hair. Don't be long. Your dinner's nearly ready.
Okay.
I looked out the window to see him going across the road. And I just saw his back, and that was the last time I saw him.
We know Brian went straight to Ormo Park, where in the next hour and a half he was seen by several of his friends, all of them now middle-aged.
Hello, Brian. All right?
I was taking my dog Spot for a walk.
Where are you going? I'm going over to the bushes to build a hut. All right. Bye. Bye.
It's just a normal Sunday. Brian seemed his happy self, and there's nothing different.
But an hour later, Brian didn't seem his happy self at all. When another friend approached him, he wasn't in the mood for play.
Will you come over there and play in those swings with me?
Soon afterwards, although this may be unconnected, a man walking his dog saw several youths crowded round a fire. The boys were swearing heavily, and he thought that something sinister was going on. A blue chopper bike was lying in the grass. A few minutes on, and a teenager went past him on a blue chopper and was violently sick.
You all right? Are you okay? Want a taster?
Go look for him, will you, Eadie? Make sure he's all right.
All right. Come on, Charlie. Right, boys.
Brian! Brian! Brian!
I just stayed in to see if he'd come home, but he didn't. Of course, all that night, I kept my front door open, went outside to look for him, called his name, Brian.
Brian! Brian, come home, Brian!
Brian, come on home. But there was no signs of him, or nothing. Somebody had took him away and just took the life out of him. How he suffered. He must have suffered. Wish I had him now.
Well, DCI George Hamilton joins me now. George, it's a tragic case, this one. And it happened 30 years ago, so why are you bringing it to Crimewatch now?
Well, yes, this is the 30th anniversary of this crime. And what we want to do is to bring the people responsible to justice and also to provide closure for the family. We can only do this if people come forward with the information that I'm confident is out there.
Now, the key thing is information you want now, 30 years on, witnesses. We saw quite a few people there in that reconstruction in Ormo Park. It was what? It was the 2nd of September, last day of the school holidays, 1973. Let's talk about, first of all, about that group of boys.
Yes, the group of boys round the fire may be significant. What is significant is that they haven't come forward to the police, either the original investigation team or part of my review team. So we're keen to talk to them, if for no other reason, for elimination purposes.
There was something they said, wasn't it? Someone thinks they heard them say, "we jock."
Yes, this term, "we jock," now that may be significant. We know that Brian may have had still a Scottish accent. He came across from Scotland when he was 5 years old. That may be significant. There again, it may not. We need to talk to these people.
Of course, they may have nothing to do with it, may they?
Yes, that's right.
And then, of course, there was the boy who was seen racing along on his chopper, and then he was violently sick into the bin. Again, he might not have anything to do with it, but you still want to talk to him.
You still want to speak to him. In fact, there were other people in the park. There were people playing tennis. There were parents with children in the park, many of whom we know have not yet come forward to talk to the police. We want to speak to them because we believe that they may be able to give us vital information in relation to Brian's movements that could be very beneficial for the investigation.
And of course, they may not be in Belfast anymore. They could be anywhere.
No, there has been a large amount of people, especially in the 70s, who left Belfast and went to live in other parts of the United Kingdom. So that's why we're hoping that these people will take the opportunity of contacting us tonight to give whatever snippet of information they may have.
Okay, well look, you heard it there, your loyalties may have changed. There may have been reasons why 30 years ago you wouldn't talk to the police. You may talk to them now, or you might have talked to the police in the original investigation. The police who are looking at this now do want to talk to everyone who talked to the police before. You may be able to shed new light on the investigation. The number's 0500 600 600, or you can call the incident room on 02890 259 784.
It's all right. The ambulance will be here soon. It's too late.
I never dreamt in my life that I would ever witness somebody in this state, you know, screaming out. I just
I'm just hoping that somebody out there shows just a little bit of a conscience to say, I saw something, I can pinpoint who was there, or just that one little bit of evidence that can put away whoever.
This last year really has been so traumatic, devastating for the whole family. Our lives have been ripped apart. Someone once said, take each day as it comes, and it's very good advice, but sometimes the day's far, far too long. It's bad enough getting from one hour to the next.
DCI Adrian Tapp is from Hertfordshire Police. I gathered just before Wayne died, one of the things he said was 3 kids, 3 lads, 3 kids, something like that jumped me.
Yes, he mentioned several times to his rescuers, 3 men, 3 kids had jumped him. So we're looking for at least 3 people involved in his murder.
And quite possibly the car that was seen with 3 people outside is a bit of a red herring. These are very likely to be local to Ferrier's estate.
Well, maybe a red herring, but we do believe the youths were wandering around the estate before the attack.
Now, you brought a whole bunch of stuff that's not been shown to the public before, and indeed tomorrow you are launching a campaign in the Ferrier's estate. You've got a leaflet, I think,
That's
is going
correct, yes,
house by house.
yes.
Quickly take us through each of these things. These are facsimiles. The originals are all in science labs.
That's right.
But these are very close copies.
Yes.
And they're all found very close to where he died.
Yes, the green petrol can was found hidden in a hedge at the end of Hunter's Close, and we believe that can could possibly have been used in his murder.
Which suggests that this wasn't entirely something that just happened, because, you know, who would be going around at midnight, after midnight with a petrol can?
That's correct, yes.
And
the piece of wood with the rag on the end, similar to a caveman's torch, was found near to where he was killed.
And it had some burn mark on it like this?
It did, yes.
Now, if
that's
somebody
right.
had innocently put that there, you need to know
We
and
do need
eliminate
to know
this
why
very,
it
very
was there
fast.
and who the owner was. And also nearby was a pink glove that was singed and burnt.
This is one very similar. Obviously, this one isn't singed and burnt. The other one was,
Yes.
quite badly.
And again, we need to know who that belongs to and how it got there.
OK, and a knife very similar to this one.
Very near to the pink glove was a knife similar to that, and you can see from the picture that the knife is very distinctive. There is wood or cork in around the screw at the rear.
So who owned that? That's the critical
Exactly,
thing.
that's what we need to know.
The girl, and perhaps there was more than one present, but certainly one girl was present at some stage shouting, stop, stop, stop it, and she didn't like what she was seeing. Very, very important she comes forward to preserve herself apart from anything else.
Absolutely, it's very clear that she didn't like what was going on. There's no doubt about that.
You're pretty confident there are people on the estate who've got more to tell you than they have told you so far?
I have no doubt whatsoever.
Please, whatever you do, don't let this go unresolved. There's a £5,000 reward should they have. Actually, I think it's £10,000 through Crime Stoppers now. 01707 335500 if you've got any information that could help.
It's not as bad as people tend to think, but there are exceptions, and this is one. A killer whose behaviour is erratic and unpredictable. The victim was a 21-year-old clerk from Davyhulme in Manchester. You may remember her from the news around Easter when it happened. Her name was Lucy Royle.
It was the evening of Good Friday 5 weeks ago, April the 18th, and Lucy was recovering from a migraine.
Pass the salt.
I believe number 25 is up for sale.
That's it? How do you know that?
One of the neighbours told me.
I didn't know they wanted to leave. No, really. How'd you touch your food, Lucy?
Oh, sorry, Mum. I don't really feel like eating. I'm going to go in the sitting room.
All right, see you in a moment. I've got a sign up.
No, not yet.
Hello? Oh, it's you. I haven't spoken to you for a while.
That was all the conversation the family overheard. We don't know who the call was from, but we know where it was from. A phone box a few hundred yards away. 9:30 on Good Friday evening. Who rang Lucy from here?
I'm just going out. Will you do us a favour? If I'm not back by 11:25, will you tape Island for me?
That was Lucy. Avid film watcher. She just... anything. She didn't go out an awful lot. She'd much rather spend an evening in watching a film, a big bag of munchies.
We don't know Lucy's route or if she met anybody on the way, though a local resident thinks she saw Lucy at the phone box. Whoever the girl was, she was talking to a man. It's important to eliminate this couple. Could it have been you? Lucy's route from her home in Jura Drive probably did go past the phone box, then up Barton Road, under the M60, and past the Tulip Inn. A security camera at the hotel shows someone who looks like Lucy at about the time it would have taken her to walk that far. Soon afterwards, Lucy sent a text message to her sister. She used her mobile phone a lot, and often used time when she was walking or waiting to sort out chores.
Hi Lucy, it's Amy.
I've actually got 2 numbers for her. Which one do you want me to use?
Oh God, I'm not sure. The number's in my phone memory. I can't check which one it is without hanging up. Can you give us a call back in a few minutes and I'll tell you?
Amy did say she could hear trees going blowing in the wind, cars and motorway. She just sounded normal, Lucy. The background noise was trees and the motorway.
Hi, Amy? Yeah. It's a 5256 number. Okay. Great. See you later. Bye.
It seems likely Lucy made that call from near Barton Embankment, close to where she died. That leads to another clue detectives are anxious to eliminate. A woman leaving the fitness club nearby noticed a green Toyota Yaris and someone sitting in the car. Barton Embankment is known as Lover's Lane. If this was your car on Good Friday evening, call in confidence to have yourself removed from the inquiry.
The morning of the Saturday, and we're wondering where Lucy is. Because we hadn't heard from Lucy, we just kept trying to get hold of her by the phone, because she always had her phone on. As the morning went on, we kept trying.
Same thing.
No answer.
Well, she never has it switched off.
I know.
We tried phoning again, and her phone just wasn't on.
Same thing. Maybe she's gone somewhere. She wouldn't go anywhere without her phone.
Maybe we should ring one of her friends.
It's broken. Maybe that's it.
And we just kept trying, phoning friends, see if she was there. No one had heard anything. So we gradually, through the morning, 11:30, 12 o'clock, we were getting to worry. It was forever. It was such a long time.
Lucy had been killed where she was found, fully clothed, but with her head smashed in and 18 stab wounds to her body.
A young girl and her life sort of taken away, just snapped away like that. They shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't. Why should they do stuff like that? Really, I can't do anything else for Lucy. I can only ask if there is anyone out there that knows anything. They might have some information. The effects it's had on this family is total devastation. Can't understand why. Just can't.
Well, this is Detective Superintendent Peter Minchell of Greater Manchester Police. Now, Peter, we're not going to go into the details, but the way she was killed was particularly violent, wasn't it?
That's right. This really is one of the most horrific murders which I've ever investigated, a really awful crime. Lucy was only 21 and really her family are absolutely devastated.
Now, if anyone has suspicions about who did this, or maybe protecting someone, perhaps with a kind of slightly misplaced sense of loyalty, what would you say to them?
Well, look, we understand about loyalty up to a point, and we can accept that people may cover up for somebody up to a point, and it's the information that's important to us. So if somebody wants to come forward tonight or the next couple of days, we can accept that. It's the information that we do want. But if it's the case that somebody carries on and continues to cover up for somebody else, then they themselves will face quite serious charges.
So let's be clear, if someone comes forward now or in the next few days and has suspicions about someone but hasn't come forward up to this point, they'll be treated sympathetically by you?
Of course they will, yes. It's their information that's important to us. That's what's really, really important to us.
OK. Now, would the killer have had blood on his or her hands, on clothing, that kind of thing?
That may be the case, and clearly somebody may have seen somebody else in that state, in that condition, or it may be that they're just somebody they know has been acting really, really differently since Good Friday.
And what about a motive for this attack?
We're not exactly clear what the motive may be. What we do know is that Lucy's rucksack and her pink phone are still missing.
Well, let's show them here.
Need to find
because this rucksack is identical
Yes,
to the one she was wearing, and this is still missing. Let me just show you the phone here. It's a little pink phone. It's got Scrumptious Bum written on it and a little picture on the back here. So these you still want to find. Now, we showed some people there in the reconstruction that you want to talk to. In particular, there's that couple who were by the phone box, and there was a red car by the phone box.
Yeah, this sighting is really, really important to us. We do need to know that if that was Lucy, then we need to know who the man was speaking to her. And equally, just as importantly, if it wasn't Lucy, then we need to know who those two people were. And also, was the car connected to the people at the phone box?
OK, well, this is far too dangerous to hold anything back. Call us here or call the incident room on 0161 856 4343 or call the local police in Davyhulme. You can also contact us by email through our website www.bbc.co.uk/crime. Months back, but it's still unsolved. The victim's widow is counting on you tonight. Micky Little was a lorry driver from Essex.
There were 400 mourners at Micky's funeral. He'd driven for Ford for over a quarter of a century. He was universally popular with his colleagues and had been with his partner, Sue, for 16 years.
Mike and I were inseparable. We were always together. When we used to walk down the road, people used to say that they remember us walking down the road hand in hand, because that was how we were. I'd pick Mike up in the afternoon, and he came out with me to do a last few deliveries on my job, and we went back to the house, and he didn't have a lot of time to get ready for work.
Sorry, love, I didn't have time to make you any sandwiches.
Don't worry, this will do. I'll get something else at work.
He enjoyed life to the full, really. Loved his job. He loved driving. He loved being behind the wheel of his lorry.
Love you. Take care.
Yeah, you too. See you in the morning.
I rang him at midnight that night. I always ring him before I go to bed, just to say goodnight, make sure he's okay.
Roger.
Hi. Where are you?
Fleet services. I'll be back about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, OK. You take care.
Yeah, I will.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
That was it. That was the last time I spoke to him.
Mick had already driven from Dagenham to Southampton, and on his way back on the M3 had stopped off for his rest break at the motorway services just south of Camberley in Surrey. Meanwhile, in Camberley itself, in Brackendale Road, someone tried to steal a car. The would-be thief bungled an attempt to hotwire the Renault Clio and cut himself on broken glass. The blood has yielded DNA evidence. Further down Brackendale Road, sometime later, but before midnight, someone took bricks from a building site. At the end of Brackendale Road is a footbridge crossing the M3.
After the initial shock of an object coming through his windscreen on a dark motorway with very little traffic around, the fear that must have gone through the guy and the absolute physical shock, for him then to bring his Arctic to a halt, fully on the hard shoulder, is just an absolute amazing feat.
It was over 3 hours before he was discovered.
We pulled up behind Micky's lorry, and I got out, went up to the passenger door of the lorry. Could see the driver was sort of slumped over to his left. My first thoughts were that he was having a quick nap, so I banged on the door, got no response, went round to the driver's door, and really from that point, when I had a really close look at Micky, I could see that something was drastically wrong. I climbed in the cab. I took his pulse and his wrist and his neck. There was no breathing, no pulse.
He's dead. His window's been smashed. You better call an ambulance.
I miss him dearly. The fact that he was taken the way he was taken, it was just so senseless and unnecessary, and it was just such a waste of a life. I can't believe that no one has come forward, because they've just totally ruined my life.
Oh, with me is DCI Graham Hill from Surrey Police. Graham, it's so tragic, this case. We showed only one man throwing the brick. I mean, it's feasible it could have been a group of people.
Yeah, I think when the Renault Clio was found, all 4 doors were open on that vehicle, so it suggests that at least more than one person were involved. And we strongly suspect that the theft of that vehicle is connected to the death of Michael Little.
And you're bound to find the people who tried to steal that car in time. And we showed someone tried to hotwire and got blood on their hands, and you've got DNA from that car, so you're going to get there in the end, don't you?
We've definitely got good samples of DNA, and I would urge viewers to ring in with people that they think may have been responsible for the theft of the vehicle. We can eliminate those people very quickly from our inquiry.
Now, a car being broken into is a crime, but nonetheless, in comparison to a murder, and this is in a murder investigation, it's a pretty minor crime. What would you say to people who may have been involved, perhaps, in trying to nick that car, may have some idea of what went on that footbridge, but who haven't come forward yet?
Well, I would say to them that we are focused on the murder of Michael Little. We want to identify the killer of Michael Little. If they were involved in any other part of what went on that evening, they need to come forward and explain what they did. We will listen to their account, and we will make a decision on our actions based on their account. At the end of the day, there is a substantial reward of £25,000 on offer for information leading to the arrest and conviction in this case.
I suppose it is possible that they may not have realised quite how serious it was. I mean, what in fact happened is as that brick went off the bridge, it hit Micky's cab, went through the windscreen with such force that when it hit him on the chest, it stopped his heart and he died almost instantly. Now, whoever was, if there were people with the person who threw that brick on the footbridge, perhaps they didn't realise quite how serious it was.
If that's the case, then they need to come forward and tell us. We need those people to come and give us their account. At the end of the day, if they're covering up for other people, then they're committing serious offences in their own right. So I'd urge them to think very hard and contact us and give us an account of what went on that night.
Now let's just remind people of the actual footbridge, where it was, because that's absolutely key to the investigation.
Yeah, the footbridge is located between Junction 3 and Junction 4 on the M3 motorway. It stretches between Camberley and Frimley and is accessed by Brackendale Road, where the car was broken into.
Now, what we want to know is if you know anything about what happened on that footbridge, or perhaps you were driving along that night and you saw something, or maybe someone tried to lob something off the footbridge onto your vehicle. If you know anything about this crime at all, give us a call. The number's 0500 600 600, or you can call the incident room on 01306 676 329. Now, 99%. New techniques with DNA keep reviving the prospects of being caught. And tonight there's a chance of cracking one of Scotland's most notorious double murders in modern history. The killing of 2 teenage girls in Edinburgh back in 1977. Christine Eadie and Helen Scott.
Well, Helen was just a normal teenager. She was, I would say, more of a tomboy than anything. If you saw Helen going out of the house, she would just about certain to be wearing jeans and a t-shirt.
Helen and Christine were both 17 and had been friends since they went to high school.
The killings of Helen and Christine are notorious in this area. I myself was a teenager just about to join the police, and I have vivid memories of how frightening this was for the general public at large here.
Right, where do you want to go now?
One Saturday after work in October 1977, Christine and Helen met up with friends and headed for the World's End pub in Edinburgh's Royal Mile.
What are you having then, girls?
What can I get you?
Whiskey and lemonade? Yeah. Desperate for the loo, you coming? Yeah.
One of the friends who was there recalls the evening well.
I think there was a comment passed on the fact that this pub was called the World's End, and we thought, well, that's a good end to the night, the World's End.
Andrew, there you are. Hey, look, there's Adrian.
There was a fella there that I knew that was from England, and I stood talking to him for a couple of minutes, and he happened to say to, he says,
"We're having a party later on, you fancy coming?"
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent. Do you want a drink?
And I said at the time, I said, well, like, Christine and Helen are with us. That's all right. He says, more the merrier. So we went back to go to town, Christine and Helen, and these two fellas were chatting to them.
We're not interested in being picked up in pubs.
Nah, we just want to take you for a dance.
Dancing? I don't know about that.
Everyone likes to have a dance. There's no harm in that.
Christine was sitting the other side and this chap was standing up, but she didn't seem to be too comfortable. It was pretty obvious that she didn't really want to be with this chap. She wasn't interested.
We've been invited to a party. Are you coming?
No, I'm just going to stay with Helen.
Are you all right?
No, I don't want to stay with him.
Come with us, then.
No, I'll stay with Helen.
All right, then. I'll see you later.
Bye.
And so Jackie and myself left. And we left them in the pub, and that's, well, it's the last time that we saw them.
Helen and Christine stayed till closing time and were noticed by two policemen. They also heard one of two men offering the girls a lift. But Helen and Christine went on walking down High Street, with two men still behind them.
It's strange to think that somewhere amongst these files, and these files contain about 13,000 statements that were taken back in 1977, the answer may lie. Statistics show that 92% of individuals who are subsequently caught for a retrospective case like this and are found to be guilty of murder are actually mentioned in the initial case papers. So the name could be in here. And that, linked with our DNA technology and the science that's helping us along with that, may just help us find the lock to that key of information we have.
First inkling I had that something was wrong was on the Sunday morning. I knew that Christine hadn't been back all night, but I just assumed that she'd stayed with Helen. And then I heard from Jackie, and she told me that Helen's mum and dad had been in touch with her to see if Helen was with her because she hadn't been home all night. And I said, well, Christine has neither. And that's when I started to think, well, where are they?
Chris!
Out of desperation, friends went out searching for Helen and Christine, even hunting open ground in Edinburgh, like Arthur's Seat. But the girls were no longer in the city. Later that Sunday, a couple walking in Gosford Bay found Christine.
Yeah, this is the A198 road. It's a coast road leading from Edinburgh to North Berwick. Christine's body was recovered at the high water mark just there. Quite a number of footprints round about her body. She was naked, she had been bound, she'd been brutally beaten, we know that, and later on we found that she'd been sexually assaulted as well.
Helen's body was found several miles away in farmland near Haddington.
This is the cornstone field where Helen's body was discovered. She was found partially clothed. The base of her feet had mud marks on it, which gave us the impression that she may have been led in here and actually killed in the field. Like Christine, she was viciously assaulted and also sexually assaulted as well. If we look into the distance in the coastline about 6 miles away, that's where Christine's body was found. It's a fairly isolated rural location, and it would give us the impression that it's somebody who is used to the area or has knowledge of the area in order to be able to navigate themselves here.
I think it was about 8, 9, 10 o'clock, I think, when before they brought Helen back to the mortuary. I was the only person that ever saw her after that. I know her mum wanted to go and things, and I said no. I said I prefer you remember Helen as you saw her that morning, going out the door. I want to see it resolved. It's got to be resolved.
or D.I. Alan Jones. We saw him in the film there. He's here now. It's over a quarter of a century old, this case. Why now? Why come to Crimewatch now?
We currently have the DNA profile of a man whom we believe is connected to the murders of both Helen and Christine. What we hope to do at this phase is widen our search for him and perhaps identify him through his family. That's the main thrust of what we're doing at present.
And this is a new development in DNA,
a new
isn't
development.
it?
It's called familial searching. So hopefully we'll be able to exploit that new technology.
It seems amazing that, you know, after 26 years you had these two blokes in the pub. They've got to be prime suspects, and yet still so little is known about them.
Yeah, you're right, they are prime suspects. Not a great deal is known about them. We know that we're in the mid-20s. We know that one of them was particularly unfashionably dressed, which is various witnesses commented.
Because it certainly stood out. We actually had, let me just get them here, we had a pair of trousers which someone who was in the pub, there described us. We had these made up, especially for the reconstruction, these pinstripe trousers with these studs on. And they stood out because they kind of stood out, they're unfashionable and...
Definitely, even for that time, they stood out. We know that both these men had Scottish accents as well, so potentially...
Edinburgh accents, could anyone tell?
Local, you know, they suggested it may have been county, which would suggest that further out into East Lothian, Mid Lothian area, but certainly Scottish accents.
And maybe what now, in their early 50s?
Early 50s, we're the late 20s at that time, so yeah, early 50s.
Now, you've got DNA of one man linked to, and the same man linked to both Helen and Christine. Is it likely that the two men were involved in both these attacks?
We're unable to say. That's the mystery of it. We only have the one profile of one offender. It may be that one man was more passive in events and didn't take the same degree of involvement in the murders.
Or who may not have been involved at all.
Or may not be involved at all. If that's the case, we want to appeal to that person to come forward. Many years have now passed, loyalties change. We would hope that individual would help us resolve the case.
When Christine and Helen were found, Helen had some of her clothes with her, but Christine had no clothes with her, she had no personal effects, and they still haven't been found. We've got this here, this cigarette lighter, silver, with it's got a Donny on. Why is that?
Yeah, she was a keen fan of the Osmonds at the time, and that relates to Donny Osmond.
And so this has never been found. And also, we've got a coat here that's very similar to the one she was wearing. And again, as I say, nothing of Chrissy's been found, and certainly not this coat.
Yeah, very distinctive again. It was a woolen coat with this fake fur collar. Rather much bluer than that coat is, but again, very distinctive for the time.
So if anyone's seen any of those items, anything, it's 26 years now, if you know anything about those two men, if you're one of those men, you were saying that someone came forward with new evidence just yesterday, so even though it's been over a quarter of a century, if you know anything, give us a call, 0500 600 600, or the instant room on 0131 311 3777.